We're back from Scotland, and we brought a few bottles back with us. Let's talk about it. Hey guys, welcome back to Whiskey on the West Coast. My name is Matt, and today we're doing kind of a partial trip breakdown video. And what I mean by that is we're not actually going to go into the details of our recent Scotland trip, which was absolutely fantastic. We're already dreaming about returning. What I wanted to talk about right now, just to kind of get back into the swing of things, is some of the bottles we brought back. I've watched similar videos like this before because I find them endlessly fascinating, and I thought we could do one of those for you guys. So here we go. These are the bottles I brought back from Scotland to Canada with me. Now, the first whiskey that was bought on our trip actually wasn't purchased by me. It was purchased by Kyla, and it wasn't purchased on Islay or in Campbeltown or in Oban or anywhere else like that. It was actually purchased at Edinburgh Castle. And that's strange because Kyla doesn't really drink much whiskey. And so I'll show you what she bought here. So she went ahead and she bought these world's tiniest bottles of whiskey. It's a 3-pack. There's 3 bottles in there. One's a Glengoyne 10-year-old. The other one is a Bowmore single malt, and another is a Burns Nectar single malt. But if you look at them real close, there's actually there's liquid inside. There is whiskey in these bottles, and sure enough, she got ID'd. She got ID'd buying these. So yeah, that is kicking off our list. Guinness Book of World Records, smallest bottle of Scotch whiskey 3-pack. Our next whiskey purchase that came home with us came from our first stop on our tour of Islay. And it when I saw the bottle, I kind of knew I had to have it. And so the first bottle I purchased was this Bruichladdich Rockin' Doll Valanche. So this one, I believe it's one of 1,500 bottles, and it is it has the entire team on the front of the label there and the picture. It is a 2004 port pipe, first fill port pipe, 18-year-old, cask strength of 55.7%, Bruichladdich, which sounds absolutely delicious. It's actually, this is bottle 1082 of 1200. And the day I actually arrived at the distillery, there was only about 12 bottles left. So the first thing I did, even before our tour, was I went ahead and I made sure one was set aside because that had to come home with me. First fill port pipe, 18-year-old Bruichladdich for like 75 pounds. Oh man, yeah, that seemed like a no-brainer. So that's the first bottle I purchased, unlike Kyla's mini bottles. So following the tour, we went ahead and checked out the Laddie shop again, which the Laddie shop is so much fun. I think I did literally spend hours there. But at the Laddie shop, I went ahead and on this trip, I really wanted to focus on things I couldn't get in Canada, obviously. And more specifically, things that were very individual and very unique to our trip. So whether they're from 2023, they're single casks, they're hand fills. And speaking of hand fills, that's the next thing I bought. I bought a Bruichladdich Port Charlotte Valanche hand fill that I could actually fill the bottle myself, which I was pretty thrilled about because it's the first time doing it. So here is the tin for my Bruichladdich Port Charlotte Valanche. Those are going out of fashion real fast. I think they're done with them now, actually. They might have a couple more left. What I picked up was this RIC02 2005 Bruichladdich Rioja cask, 17-year-old cask strength Port Charlotte. I tried a sample of it before going ahead and purchasing this Valanche. 50.1%, if you're curious. It was delicious. It was delectable. 17-year-old Port Charlotte. I'm convinced that Port Charlotte's just getting better as it gets older. It gets more age on it. I was blown away. So they're thinking they're going to get about 603 bottles out of this one. So if you're at the distillery in the near future, they probably still have a few bottles of that. You can swipe that. I really loved it. It's fantastic. And I have a soft spot for Rioja wine because of my travels in Spain. So I'm always interested in what that's going to do with the whiskey. What else did I purchase at Bruichladdich? Well, I purchased actually something that they found in the warehouse. Something that was long lost, gone forever, and then they just found a few cases of, which was a little 200 milliliter bottles of Bruichladdich rocks from, I believe, 2011. And that bottle I meant to bring home with me, but with customs and Canada, you're only allowed to bring back 1.14 liters of alcohol with you back into the country before you get taxed something ridiculous like 300% taxes or something like that. And so I got real nervous, and that's something actually I wound up drinking on the trip. However, I did bring back some samples because we did a warehouse tasting. And so I brought a few things that may show up in the future here for warehouse tasting, but I drank a lot of my sample bottles, but these ones made it back. And so we'll start off. There is a Bruichladdich 2007 15-year-old Islay barley, which I love the Islay barley releases. This is a Dunlosset Truin Islay barley release, 56.3%, drawn straight from the cask. You do three cask samples, three main cask samples of cask pulls when you're doing the warehouse tasting. The second one was a 2015 Port Charlotte 7-year-old. You can see the color on that, 59.3%. It was first 5 years in ex-bourbon, last 2 years in first fill Pedro Jimenez. And then finally, a sample I was really stoked for. This is Octomore 7.3, I guess Redux, I guess extended edition. What it is so 7.3 was released quite a few years ago. However, they still had some casks from that run, which they went ahead and they continued to age. And so I really enjoyed the 7.3 before, but now this is a 12-year-old Octomore. The first number of years were in first fill ex-bourbon, transferred into Ribera del Duero wine casks. And then after the wine casks, they went ahead and they put it into the refill ex-bourbon casks to finish it off. And that was post-release for the Octomore 7.3. So that's a fascinating one. I still have an Octomore 7.3, so I'm holding on to that sample to go ahead and compare to the 7.3 one day to see what the extra years in a refill bourbon cask did to it. That'll be fun. That'll be a lot of fun. So that is our first stop on Islay. I can tell you I was already in trouble for my customs allotment. More on that later though. Two more quick samples I snuck back with me from Bruichladdich. One is the Fegil Rockin' Doll 2.1. It's the ex-bourbon and Sauternes cask. 16-year-old Bruichladdich from this year. So I've got that. I had that at the distillery as well. It was interesting. And then the distillery exclusive Octomore, the Octomore 13.4. It's a Virgin Oak release. It was actually my first Virgin Oak Octomore, which was really interesting to have. I've got a sample of that here. It's 137.3 ppm, 61.6%. That's serious business. So yeah, those will be really interesting, and hopefully I can bring you some thoughts on especially the Octomore 13.4. Next up, we visited Kilchoman distillery, which was a great tour. It was wonderful. We had to kind of squeeze that in between our Bruichladdich tour and Bruichladdich warehouse tasting, and so we didn't have much time to make purchases there. And again, I could tell right away I was going to run out of space in my luggage real fast, and so I actually didn't buy a bottle at Kilchoman. What I did buy, because you know I like my caps, is I bought another cap because I need another cap like I need another bottle of whiskey. Yeah. Anyways, you'll see this on a video at some point, I'm sure. Next up on our tour of Islay and places I brought whiskey back from is the Bowmore distillery. Now, Bowmore, I went ahead and did the #1 vaults tour, and much like the warehouse tour at Bruichladdich, you get to pull whiskey from at least 3 different casks in the #1 vaults in their warehouse. And in this case, we had the option of 3 different casks, which were, one was a 2003 ex-bourbon cask, one was a 1999 red wine cask, and the one I went with was a 2001 first fill Oloroso sherry cask. And so you get to use the Valanche, the little copper dog Valanche, to go ahead and pull your own whiskey from the cask and then fill up your own bottle. So this is kind of the box you get with it. And if I can pull this off and with some grace, see, you get this little package here. So it comes with a little whiskey tasting booklet, water dropper, pen, all that. But most importantly here is this bottle. Small 100 milliliter bottle of, just double checking. Yeah, cask type, first fill Oloroso, year filled 2001, cask number 457, and it's 52% ABV. I believe that made it, they told us 2020, I believe it was 21-year-old first fill Oloroso sherry Bowmore. I had this theory going in that the number 1 vaults is where they kept the good Bowmore, and that theory's just been proven sound, that the good Bowmore is in the number 1 vaults. If you guys go, I highly suggest that tour. Mind-blowing glasses of whiskey are poured there. Also from the Bowmore distillery, they said that this never happens, but they happened to, at the end of our tour, be releasing a Bowmore handfill. And so compared to the Fegil release, which I believe was well over 200 pounds, the distillery handfill actually seemed like a steal. So I went ahead and I purchased a bottle of the Bowmore handfill they just released. So I'll pull that out here. It is a 10-year-old first fill Oloroso sherry bottling right there, and with these little Hessian sackcloth bags with the bottle, it comes with this hang tag booklet that you put over the neck of the bottle, and it contains all the information about the bottle. It's actually kind of the slick little presentation there. So Bowmore handfill, and inside they write in cask type Oloroso sherry, date bottled was May 22nd, 2023. Distillation date was November 13th, 2012. So like 10 and a half years old. 56.7% ABV, cask number 15393, bottle number 78, I guess, is the one that was written on the front of this. But yeah, I'm stoked with that purchase. Again, I don't love Bowmore's official bottlings all that much, but when you can get it cask strength from the distillery like this, they haven't mucked about with it. That's the good Bowmore for sure. Lastly, I walked off with a couple really interesting sample bottles of Bowmore as well, because they really do treat you well at the bar. And there was a couple I really wanted to bring back in case I wanted to make videos surrounding them. And so one is this distillery exclusive 25-year-old Bowmore, bottled at 50.2% ABV. I have to dig into that to see what it is. I didn't have time because we had to get to Bunnahabhain to really sit with it. So I definitely wanted to take that in a sample bottle. But 25-year-old Bowmore, my word. Yeah, no, I'll take that. And interestingly, there were 6 casks in the Bowmore warehouse of young spirit. I believe it was about 7 years old, that were the first casks ever produced at Bowmore that were made entirely of barley, peated barley, that was malted on their own malting floors. Usually they blend it in with the other barley they get from elsewhere. But there was originally 7 casks, but one of these was bottled up and sold at Fegil, and it was a 7-year-old entirely virgin oak and entirely Bowmore floor malted release. And so I have a sample of that 7-year-old handfill of the virgin oak, entirely floor malted at Bowmore release. And I'm really fascinated by that because I'd love to have an idea of what just 100% malt that was actually produced at Bowmore would taste like. Now, of course, I don't know what an entirely virgin oak produced Bowmore tastes like, so the experiment won't be perfect, but it'll be still fascinating. So that is my haul from Bowmore. Next up, we head to the north side of Islay. We did the Bunnahabhain tour and the warehouse tasting, number 9 warehouse tasting. And so I went ahead and, again, trying to be mindful of how much I'm bringing back, because again, I'm in trouble here. I bought 2 small bottles. The warehouse cask samples, what you try, and I believe we tried 4 different casks at Bunnahabhain. You can actually go ahead and purchase bottles of those whiskeys you're trying. Furthermore, you can actually buy small bottles of them, 200 ml bottles. And so that's what I did. I was trying to kind of bring back more experiences with me. So I bought 2 miniature bottles of Bunnahabhain. And so one of them was one of the ones we tasted there that day. And it is this 2014 Canasta Cream Sherry Bunnahabhain. So 2014, I believe that would, for when this was bottled in May of this year. It should be right around 9 years old. And it's cask number 2736, bottled at 60.8% ABV. So I had a few thoughts on this. Number one, it was delicious. We tried a traditional sherry cask Bunnahabhain. We had a entirely ex-bourbon cask Bunnahabhain, and we had a Moina like peated Bunnahabhain as well. This one stood out to me just because it was really good. It was incredibly delicious. But the Fegil, one of the Fegil releases, there was a trio of them, was a Canasta Cream Sherry release this year. But it was proof down. It was proof down from cask strength. And so I thought this would be really fascinating if I happen to get my hands on some samples or even a bottle of that actual Fegil Canasta Cream release to compare this one to it, because this was delicious. Also fascinating was, I was curious if this means that the Fegil release from this past year may actually be about 9 years old. The Canasta Cream Sherry casks that they used for the Fegil release, they could have been older. They could have been recast into those ones, a whole bunch of things. But it makes me suspicious that maybe this was a cask that was left behind from that Fegil release, and maybe that release was 9 years old. Either way, really cool bottle. The other mini bottle I got from Bunnahabhain was, I almost wish I just bought a full bottle of this, because I really love Manzanilla cask finishes. But I went ahead and I purchased this, 2004 Bunnahabhain Manzanilla cask. It's 56.5%. It's cask number 553. So it's a Warehouse 9 hand fill, but it was bottled in June of 2023. Actually, it was bottled really only days before we got there, on June 18th. Weirdly enough, 2004. That makes this likely in and around 19-year-old Bunnahabhain from a Manzanilla cask. Oh man, yeah, I should have bought a full bottle. That I tried a sample. It was delicious, and it was only, I believe, 45 pounds, which seemed really good for the age on it. So really stoked to have those here. Some regrets, but again, Canadian duty is what it is. All right, let's get to the next distillery. Next up, we hit up Laphroaig. We were going there for a tour and a tasting, but of course, I had to go ahead and claim my rent for my square foot of peat that they are borrowing from me. They're renting from me. So got my little miniature of Laphroaig 10. Again, because I was worried about customs, I actually wound up drinking this later on while hiking Arthur's Seat early in the morning. I think probably 10 in the morning. And it was probably a good thing that this was the lighter version of Laphroaig 10. You could actually notice it was a lighter version at 40% instead of the 43% I'm used to out here. But I kept the tin because I thought it was kind of cool, and it had this little stamp here that says rent claimed. So yeah, was happy to bring that home with me. But to actual bottles I brought back from Laphroaig. So we did the Distillers Wares tour. So that was tour, warehouse tasting, 3 casks you're pulling from. First one was a First Fill X Maker's Mark bourbon cask. And if that sounds familiar, that's because that's the exact cask type from the exact warehouse 1, that gave us the Laphroaig Cartridge Warehouse 1 release last year. And so that was one of the options. Another option was, actually, I'll just show you, I brought back a sample of that one, because with this particular tour, you, much like the Bowmore one, you get to bottle a small bottle of your preferred cask. So since we're both on the tour, we picked small bottles of the other 2. But I brought home a bit of the ex Maker's Mark Warehouse 1 Laphroaig, which was it was 7 years old, distilled in 2016. I wanted to compare that to the Laphroaig Cartridge release because I'd be really interested to see the differences. Also, I mean, I'm sure they use those bourbon casks over multiple years, but it also made me wonder if that was the age of the Cartridge. I think the Cartridge is older, so don't pay too much heed to that, but it'll be an interesting comparison. So for the bottles we did choose, they come in these cool little Laphroaig bags, kind of cute. I'm gonna toss these aside though. So the first one, you can see the color on this. And this was, Kyla really liked the nose on this one. It was super aromatic. And this was a 2016 7-year-old exclusively virgin oak matured Laphroaig. 59% alcohol. Yeah, that was super interesting. That was my favorite of the tasting there, was the virgin oak. But since she was already pegging that as the one she wanted to bring home, for my choice, I went with the other option, which was a Laphroaig from 2017. So only 6 years old. You see the color on that there. And this was exclusively Fino Sherry matured Laphroaig. And that is at 59.1% alcohol. Both were great. I really enjoyed them. I enjoy Laphroaig. I was a little disappointed at how young everything was from Laphroaig. All 3 casks that we were pulling from were 7 years older under. So if you are booking tours, keep that in mind. Maybe they sometimes have older these days, but seemed fairly young compared to, say, Bowmore, where everything was 20 years old or older, really. So yeah, something to consider. But that's what I picked up from Laphroaig. At Lagavulin, we went ahead and we did the warehouse tasting with Ian MacArthur, who sounds like, he told us he is actually going ahead and retiring this December. So if you are planning to do the warehouse tasting with the legendary Ian MacArthur, get there soon, because you're running out of time to have one last kick at the can for that. It's a great tasting. Was able to bring back one full set of the whiskeys we went ahead and tried during that, which was awesome. And it's great that they had this little pack that you could package it all in. And so what we went ahead and we tried, and you can see they're all lined up along here. We tried the 2023 Fegio release, which is a 14-year-old, I believe it's cask strength, from an Armagnac cask, which I've had a number of samples of it. It's really good, but the price is ridiculous. A preview of that there. This here is a 2010 red wine. Sorry, not 2010. 2012 refill hogshead is like 52.1% alcohol. So starting off with 2012, so about 11 years old. Then moved to a 12-year-old right here, which was the recharred red wine cask. So when I heard that, I kind of thought of the Offerman edition, the third one, which was using recharred red wine casks, SDR casks. That's actually what I have in my glass right now in this Cadenhead's warehouse tasting glass. The next sample was I'm just checking a note here because there's a lot of samples to go through. A 16-year-old refill sherry butt from 2007. So that's basically Lagavulin 16-year-old that hasn't been messed with, 54.3%. That was amazing. And then I went ahead and I pulled with the Valanche myself. This sample here, which is an 18-year-old Lagavulin from a bodega sherry, but 18 years old, cask strength 49% from 2005. That was a sobering dram. That was unreal. So I have cask samples of all those, as well as the one Feggio release. Really excited to have those back home. And then I saw something interesting on the shelves at Lagavulin because I didn't actually think I was going to buy a bottle there. Everything just seemed so high in price. I think that Feggio release, 14 years old, was like 220 pounds. But you get 10% off if you do a tour. What I did bring back is I found a old Lagavulin Jazz Festival release selected by Ian MacArthur, and I figured he's retiring, it's at the right price, I think I'll pick it up. And so what I picked up was the 2018 Lagavulin Jazz Festival release here. So you can see that there. And just to give you some of the specifics so I don't get them messed up here, 58.5%, which is cask strength. Wood type is a blend of first fill American oak barrels, refill American oak hogsheads, and European oak puncheons. And again, bottled especially to celebrate the Islay Jazz Festival of 2018. And it does say natural cask strength on it, selected by Ian MacArthur, personally selected by Ian MacArthur. So I thought, you know what? That's a great little souvenir bottle to bring back. And even though it's not something that we specifically tried in that tasting, it had that connection to Ian. So I said, yeah, what the hell? Why not? All right, our last stop on this tour, we went to many distilleries, but the last one where I purchased bottles from was Springbank and Glengyle. So the Springbank shop. So the Springbank tours, Cadenhead's warehouse tasting, Glengyle tour, they're all fantastic. When you do the Glengyle or Springbank tours, at the end of the tour, they go ahead and they offer you a dram, and if you need, they have driver's drams for you. But they also offer you something that's really cool, is individual private bottling that they do for distillery visitors on each year. So this one here is the Springbank one. It's entirely ex-bourbon Springbank 10-year-old, bottled up 46%. It's 50 milliliters, but it says right on the front, Springbank Single Malt Scotch Whisky, private bottling for distillery visitors 2023. So we've got two of those because there's two of us on the tour there, and same for Kilchoman. So this one also was 100% ex-bourbon, barrel aged Kilchoman, and again, private bottling for distillery visitors, 46% ABV. So that's a really cool thing to do. I really loved that touch. It instantly gives you a souvenir that's tied to your visit to the distillery for that year, 2023 being this year. So I loved that. So I didn't crack those. I brought those home with me to be opened another day. When we first arrived in Campbeltown, I actually went to go and do the Cadenhead's warehouse tasting, which was great. More on that at another time. But when I got there, there were Springbank cage bottlings. And so cage bottlings is kind of luck of the draw, what's in the cage at that time, or if there's anything at all. So I went ahead and I purchased a Springbank 11-year-old fresh sherry cage bottling. And I was stoked with that. I was excited. However, I had to bring that bottle back because there were multiple air bubbles in the glass on the back, and they were close enough to the surface. Actually, the glass was flaking and splintering off on the back. And seeing as I had a long journey ahead of me on the plane back to British Columbia, I didn't want to chance it, so I had to bring that bottle back, and they actually didn't have any bottles of that one left, and so I had to go with something else. And so what I wound up getting for my Springbank cage bottling was a 9-year-old Springbank fresh sherry, 59.1%, bottled, it looks like May 14, no, distilled May 14th, 2013. Yeah, this bottle looks like a serious piece of business. It was bottled on 4/20, on April 20th, 2023. So was stoked to get a Springbank cage bottling. Didn't expect that to go ahead and happen. I also went to the Washback Bar, tried a 1996 Amontillado cask Springbank, which was friggin' divine. And I tried a couple of the open day releases, and they were so good that I actually had to bring 2 of them back. The 24-year-old Springbank, I believe, was sold out, but they had half bottles, and they only issued, I think, 2,000 bottles of each open day release, but they had half bottles of the Longrow from the Campbeltown Malts Festival. It's matured in Oloroso sherry casks, bottled at 54.9% ABV. It's a Longrow 8-year-old at cask strength, which that was a pretty cool bottle to be able to pick up. I tried it. It was friggin' delicious. And one more was the Hazelburn 14-year-old for the Campbeltown Malts Festival. Springbank Open Day, Hazelburn Open Day, I guess I should say. Matured in Oloroso sherry casks, 49.8% alcohol, cask strength, which seems a little low. But I've seen a few of their special releases coming in and around that ABV too. So maybe there's just a bit more angel share on that. Either way, it was really good. The Hazelburn might have been the best of the 2 open day releases. The next day, we returned to Springbank for a Springbank tour. At that time, we went ahead and checked out the cage again because, of course, Kyla hadn't grabbed a cage bottling yet. And so she was able to go ahead and get a Hazelburn. That's this Hazelburn fresh sherry, 14-year-old. I'll read you off the details here. 14 years old, Hazelburn fresh sherry, 54.5% ABV. Yeah, I'm sure that one's gonna be a stunner. I love the prices at Springbank too. You know, 14-year-old single cask fresh sherry. This is 75 pounds. It's so reasonable. It really is. I am thrilled with that. Lastly, but not least, for these bottles that I picked up, I almost left this one behind because I was sweating so much with the amount of whiskey we were bringing back, the limits being what they were. But I love this distillery. I had to try it. Again, for the Campbeltown Malts Festival, Cadenhead went ahead and bottled miniature bottles. So little 20 centiliter, 200 milliliter bottles. And this one is actually, it's a Bruichladdich. It's a 15-year-old Bruichladdich from a Chateau Clemens hogshead. 53.2% cask strength. So this is what this looks like here, so I don't get too lost just fantasizing about what this tastes like. The big thing about this bottle, though, is it's something I don't have, and I've only tried once before, because this isn't Bruichladdich, this isn't Port Charlotte, this isn't Octomore. This is actually a Loch-in Doll, which is at a peating level somewhere between Port Charlotte and Octomore, and it's something that Bruichladdich just they don't do anymore. They don't make Loch-in Doll anymore. So I'm really excited to get my hands on this 2007 15-year-old Loch-in Doll. And again, small bottle, made me believe a little bit more that I might be able to bring it back with me. The story on that, went through the airport, went to customs, declared. Never want to lie, always want to be truthful, tell people straight up what we're bringing back. They asked what we're over on. I said Scotch whiskey. They asked where we're coming from. I told them we're coming from Scotland. And CBSA officer said, have a nice day, get out of here, which I was really thankful for, because that would have been a big hit to the pocketbook at the end of probably the most expensive trip of my life. It was a wonderful trip. We're already, as I said, just dreaming about going back, and I am just, I'm probably drooling a little bit on the table here, looking at these bottles and thinking about what to crack first. So lots of videos here for content, guys. Lots of impressions to give you of all the distilleries I visited. I hope to have more content, more videos, probably like a tips video for visiting Islay for the first time. This was my first time in Scotland, so I viewed it from that lens, so I might be able to give you some helpful tips if you haven't been before. Let me know in the comments, guys. Once again, thank you for watching this video, but let me know, what would you have brought back with you? What would have been your priority? If there was a bottle on this table, if you had to pick just one, or maybe your top 3, let me know what you would have brought home with you from everything here. And if you happen to have visited these distilleries this year, maybe you've tried some of the Campbeltown Malt Festival releases, let me know what you think of them. I'm really interested to hear about them. I had them that once, but from the Washback Bar, you're at the distillery, probably a little starry-eyed. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. Thanks once again for joining me on Whiskey on the West Coast. I love all the feedback, and it's been fun so far, guys. I'm looking forward to so much more. So from the West Coast, until next time, Slange.